And number 27 is um, a place where a lot of people make mistakes. I really want to help you out. Um, I see a lot of kids get tangled up with this. And honestly, it's one of those things that, like, all the science nerds, if your mommy and daddy leave you alone with science documentaries, this would be old news. But this is something where just in day-to-day conversation, even I will mess this up, that I'm like talking to the mailman and you tangle up the logic. So be really careful about this. I can help you. It's just a few minutes. It's an important distinction. Okay. Glaciers are ice at high elevation on land. Okay. They're permanent snow fields. My children are both named after rivers that are both fed by glaciers. So there's a Merced Glacier and a Lyell Glacier. Those are my kids' middle names. Ona Merced, Tobias Lyell. And a glacier is a permanent snowfield. So it melts a little bit in the summer, but then you add a little bit of snow back in the winter. These are high elevation places. So the ice is normally really, really, really dense and really, really old, right? It'll melt a little bit off the top and then you pack more on it. So it's like water ice. Remember we talked about bubbles? So because the top melts and then refreezes and melts and then refreezes, you lose all the air bubbles. So unlike a regular snowfield at really high elevations, these are super packed. They're really, really dense. Water ice, okay, solid, no air bubbles. It's important to point out that on a heating planet, glaciers are melting. My son's glacier is gone. It's no longer a glacier. Sad truth, on the year that my boy turned 3, we declassified the Lyell Glacier. It's no longer a glacier. It's just a bunch of snow that's melting. I told my kids that, when they turn 16, I'll take them up to go see their glaciers. We'll get up on top of their mountains and go look at their glaciers. And I was just talking to one of my science nerds, and it looks like my boy's mountain is heating up so quickly that there might not be a glacier for me to show him. Anyway, sorry. When these glaciers melt, this is new water, extra water. And so it adds to ocean levels, right? Sea level rise from new water. On a hotter planet, glaciers are becoming less dense, right? Because they're not really compressing as much anymore. And now that they're lighter, they move differently. This is affecting the availability of surface water. People in many parts of Asia get the majority of their fresh water from melting glaciers. And so we know that many parts of India will run out of water in the next 100 years. That's pretty tough because India has a lot of people who drink glacier melt. This is different from sea ice. Sea ice is floating. Like, it's an ice cube that's floating in the water. And you might have heard tip of the iceberg, right? The idea that 10% of the ice floats. That's because when you freeze water, the water molecules have to arrange themselves in this pattern. So ice is bigger. It's the same amount of molecules occupying more space, right? That's why ice floats, because it's the same amount of stuff spread out. So it has a lower density than water. That's why a little bit of the ice sticks out of the water, but it's the same molecules. So when you melt sea ice, those same molecules just pack themselves into a smaller space. Now that they're liquid form, they don't have to line up funny. They can kind of move around each other. If that explanation was confusing, I'm sorry. I go back to 7th grade or something. But sorry, that was mean. You don't need to understand why is what I should have said. You don't need to understand why. You do need to know that sea ice is floating. Either it comes off of land or it freezes from ocean water. And yes, that is melting too, but no, that does not add to sea level. That was already in the ocean. So instead of being liquid form, you can have ice form. and that's a little bit bigger, so it floats. And instead of having ice, you can put those back into liquid form, but that's not new or extra water. It was already in the water. So melting sea ice does not affect sea level. And finally, remember this forever, almost all rising sea level is because hotter water is bigger. Water molecules collide with each other more forcefully, so they expand their area. Sea level rise is from thermal expansion. I think we might be done. I've got one more study goal about the forecasted impacts of climate change, and then we start the next study goal. Okay, I'm going to stop.